The secret in his hands, the courtroom was silent. Cameras flashed outside, reporters shouted questions, but inside the air was still, heavy with something deeper than curiosity. Keanu Reeves walked through the doors, wearing his usual calm black suit, his eyes steady but distant. Everyone expected him to say something, but no one expected what he was about to reveal. The world only knew the headlines. Keanu Reeves sued over hidden inheritance. Mystery woman files case against the actor. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that Keanu wasn't here to defend himself. He was here to protect someone else. And in his hands, he carried a small brown envelope that held a secret capable of changing everything. As he took his seat, whispers filled the room. The woman sitting across from him, Claire, avoided his eyes. Her expression was cold, but her hands trembled slightly. No one knew who she really was. Only Keanu did. And that truth was the reason his heart felt heavier than it ever had. The judge entered, the room rose, and the sound of the gavel echoed like a heartbeat. "Mr. Reeves," the judge said, "you are here regarding the claim of hidden assets belonging to your late friend, Daniel Cole." Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor, but I believe this case isn't about money. It's about something deeper," the crowd murmured, confused. Reporters started typing faster. Keanu reached into his coat pocket and placed the envelope on the table. "Everything you're looking for," he said quietly, "is inside this." His lawyer looked shocked. "Keanu, are you sure?" He nodded again, calm but firm. "Truth doesn't need protection. People do." For a moment the courtroom froze. Claire's eyes filled with something close to panic. She whispered to her attorney, but her voice was shaky. Keanu noticed, but he didn't react. Instead, he closed his eyes for a brief second, remembering Daniel, his closest friend, the man who once saved his life on a dark night years ago. And the woman sitting across from him was Daniel's sister. She had come to court claiming that Keanu had stolen her brother's estate. But the truth was more complicated, far more painful. When the judge asked him to open the envelope, Keanu hesitated. It wasn't fear. It was the weight of what that paper meant. It wasn't just evidence. It was a confession. Finally, he said softly, "Before I show what's inside, I want to tell you something. Daniel wasn't just a friend to me. He was family. And the secret I hold isn't about inheritance. It's about a promise I made the night he died." The courtroom fell into silence again. Claire looked up, tears forming but unshed. "I promised him," Keanu continued, "that I would protect the truth, even if it destroyed me." And as he broke the seal of the envelope with trembling hands, everyone leaned forward, holding their breath. Whatever was inside wasn't just going to change the case. It was going to change everything they thought they knew about him. The promise revealed. The sound of paper filled the courtroom as Keanu slowly opened the envelope. The judge leaned forward. The reporters stopped typing, and Claire's breathing grew uneven. Inside the envelope was a single handwritten letter. The kind of letter that carried more emotion than any lawyer's argument ever could. Keanu's hands shook slightly as he began to read. "This," he said quietly, "is Daniel's final letter. He wrote it to me the night before his accident." The judge gestured for him to continue. Keanu took a deep breath. He was struggling. Not with money, not with fame, but with guilt. He had found something, or rather someone, that he didn't know how to face. His eyes softened, and he looked at Claire. "He wrote about you." A ripple went through the courtroom. Claire's head dropped slightly, her lips trembling. Keanu continued, his voice steady but full of pain. "Dear Keanu," he read aloud, "if anything happens to me, promise me one thing. Don't let my sister carry the blame for my choices. She's been through enough. She doesn't know the truth about the accident, and she shouldn't have to. Tell her I forgive her, even if she never forgives herself." Keanu stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. Everyone waited for him to explain what it meant. The judge frowned slightly. "Mr. Reeves, what does this letter imply?" Keanu placed the page gently on the table. "The night Daniel died, he was driving to meet me. He had borrowed money. Not from me, but from people who wanted him to invest in a movie deal. When it failed, he felt trapped. He thought he'd ruined his sister's future, but he didn't know that she never wanted the money. She just wanted him safe. Claire's face crumbled. "That's not true," she whispered. "He told me you kept something from me, that you were hiding what really happened." Keanu looked at her with deep sadness. "I wasn't hiding anything, Claire. I was protecting him. And you. When he crashed that night, he wasn't running away from debt. He was coming to see me with this letter. He wanted to tell the truth, but he didn't make it." The courtroom grew tense again. The judge leaned back, processing every word. "And what was your promise?" the judge asked. Keanu's voice broke slightly. "That I'd take care of her. Not through money, not through fame, but through truth. I promised him I'd carry that secret until the time was right." Tears rolled down Claire's cheeks now. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Because you weren't ready to hear it," Keanu said gently. "You needed to find peace before you could forgive him." The judge cleared his throat softly. "So this entire case, it was built on misunderstanding?" Keanu nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. And I'm not here to win. I'm here to let the truth finally rest." And as he placed the letter in front of the judge, the world outside the courtroom had no idea that the man everyone saw as a hero had just carried a friend's final secret with a kind of grace most people never see. The truth was no longer hidden, but what it would cause next, no one in that room was ready for. The testimony that broke the silence. The next morning, the courtroom was more crowded than ever. News channels called it the mystery confession of Keanu Reeves. People waited outside with cameras, eager to see what the letter really meant. But inside, the atmosphere was not about fame. It was about truth, raw and painful. Claire sat in her seat quietly, her eyes red but calm. She hadn't spoken much after the letter was read the day before. Something inside her had shifted. Guilt had started to melt into understanding, but she still needed answers, all of them. When the judge entered, Keanu stood again, ready to speak. "Your Honor," he began softly, "I'd like to finish my testimony. There's something else the world doesn't know about Daniel's death." A quiet murmur swept through the room. The judge nodded. "You may continue." Keanu took a slow breath. "The night Daniel died, I was supposed to meet him at a diner near the Pacific Coast Highway. We'd been arguing for weeks about his debts, his investors, and his decision to sell his film rights. I told him not to trust the people he was working with. He didn't listen." His eyes lowered for a moment. "An hour before the crash, he called me. His voice was shaking. He said someone was following him. I told him to come straight to me, but he never made it." The courtroom fell into a tense silence. Claire's eyes widened. "Someone was following him?" Keanu nodded. "Yes. The police report said it was an accident caused by rain. But I found something the next day. A torn piece of fabric on the side of the road, and marks that didn't match his car." He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a small sealed plastic bag. Inside was the fabric piece, dark and worn, still marked with dried mud. "I gave this to the police years ago," he said. "They said there wasn't enough proof to reopen the case, so I kept it, not to protect myself, but because I believed someday someone would come looking for the truth." The judge leaned forward. "And you believe that person is Ms. Claire Cole?" Keanu nodded gently. "Yes, Your Honor. She deserves to know what really happened. Daniel didn't just lose control. Someone forced him off that road." Gasps spread across the room. The reporters' fingers flew over their keyboards. Claire covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears falling freely. "Mr. Reeves," the judge said carefully, "why didn't you speak publicly before now?" Keanu's voice softened. "Because the people behind it were powerful. I was warned to stay silent or risk everything, my career, my safety, and hers. But a promise means nothing if fear wins. And I made a promise." He turned to Claire. "Your brother wasn't running from guilt, Claire. He was trying to save you from them." Claire's voice broke. "Them? Who are they?" Keanu hesitated. The entire courtroom waited, breathless. "They were investors," he said finally. "The same ones who approached you last year about reopening Daniel's film project. They've been watching you too." The judge called for order as the room erupted with noise. Claire sat frozen, realization dawning slowly. her brother's death wasn't an accident, and the people she thought were helping her might be the same ones who had destroyed him. Keanu's gaze was steady, filled with quiet strength. "This isn't a court case anymore," he said softly. "It's a confession and a warning." And as the gavel struck, echoing through the room, one thing became clear. The secret Keanu brought to court wasn't just about the past. It was about protecting what was left of a broken promise, and the truth that could still save a life. The threat behind the truth, that night after the dramatic court session, the world couldn't stop talking. Every channel, every headline carried the same story. Keanu Reeves exposes hidden truth behind friend's death. But what the media didn't know was that the real storm was only beginning. Keanu left the courthouse quietly, slipping into a black car without saying a word to reporters. His lawyer begged him to stay somewhere safe, but Keanu shook his head. "If I run," he said softly, "then their silence wins." He returned to his small Los Angeles home, the one he'd bought years ago to escape the noise of Hollywood. Inside, it was dark and still. The envelope, the letter, and the piece of torn fabric sat on his table under a small lamp. He looked at them, knowing they had already changed everything. His phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The message was short. "You should have stayed quiet." Keanu stared at it, expression unreadable. He didn't reply. He simply set the phone down and poured himself a cup of tea. It wasn't fear he felt. It was something stronger. Purpose. Meanwhile, Claire sat alone in her apartment, shaking. Everything Keanu had said in court replayed in her mind. The investors, the threats, her brother's final call. She opened her old emails from that year and saw something she had never noticed before. An unsigned message sent days before Daniel's death. It said, "Tell him not to break the contract. People are watching." Her hands went cold. She grabbed her coat and rushed out into the night. At the same time, Keanu was sitting by the window, watching rain hit the glass when headlights appeared outside his house. He frowned, stood up slowly, and walked to the door. Before he could reach it, there was a knock. He opened it and found Claire standing there, drenched, trembling, holding her phone. "You were right," she whispered. "They contacted me too. I think they know you gave the letter to the court." Keanu motioned for her to come in. "You're safe here," he said quietly. She sat down, her eyes full of confusion and fear. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why did you carry all of this alone?" He looked at her with calm sadness. "Because Daniel asked me to. He said if the truth came out too early, they'd come after you. I waited until you were ready, until you were strong enough to face it." She stared at him, realizing what that meant. "You've been protecting me this whole time." Keanu nodded slightly. "I made a promise to your brother, and I keep my promises." Before she could answer, another knock echoed through the quiet house. This one louder, heavier. Both of them froze. Keanu motioned for her to stay silent. He walked to the window and looked out. 2 black cars were parked outside, engines still running. He turned back to her, his voice low but steady. "They're here." Claire's heart raced. "What do they want?" Keanu reached for the old envelope again, his hand steady. "The truth," he said. "And they'll do anything to bury it again." The next few minutes would change everything, and as the rain poured harder, Keanu Reeves, the man the world called gentle and calm, prepared to face something darker than any role he'd ever played. Not for fame, not for fear, but for a promise that still lived in his heart. The night of the reckoning, the sound of rain mixed with the slow hum of car engines outside. Keanu and Claire sat in silence, the tension so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Through the window, he could see the silhouettes of 2 men standing near the cars. Their posture wasn't casual. They weren't neighbors. They were watching. Keanu turned off the lights. "I stay away from the windows," he whispered. Claire moved closer, her hands shaking. "Keanu, what are we going to do?" He didn't answer right away. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Officer Hayes," he said quietly when the call connected. "This is Reeves." "They're here." The voice on the other end paused, then said, "Stay inside. Backup is on the way." He hung up and sat down beside Claire. His calmness was almost unreal. "Oh, when Daniel told me to protect the truth," he said softly, "I didn't realize how far they'd go to stop it." Claire's voice trembled. "Who are they?" He looked toward the window, his face half in shadow. "They're not movie producers. They were laundering money through Daniel's film company. When he found out, they tried to silence him." Her eyes widened. "And now they're trying to silence you." Keanu nodded slowly. "But I'm not running. I've run from too many things in life already." Outside, footsteps approached the door. 3 hard knocks broke the silence. Keanu's eyes flickered toward the entrance, his heartbeat steady. "Stay here," he whispered. He opened the door halfway. 2 men in dark suits stood there, one holding an umbrella, the other holding a thin briefcase. "Mr. Reeves," the taller one said calmly, "we just want to talk." Keanu's expression didn't change. "You should have gone to court if you wanted to talk. The court doesn't need to know everything," the man said coldly. "Hand over the letter and the evidence." "This doesn't have to get complicated." Keanu's jaw tightened. "You already made it complicated the night Daniel died." The man's smile disappeared. "Then you've made your choice." He turned slightly to signal the driver, but before anything could happen, police sirens echoed down the street. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the rain. The men exchanged glances, then quickly backed away. "This isn't over," one of them said, retreating to the car. Keanu watched as the vehicle sped off, tires splashing water across the road. Moments later, officers arrived, surrounding the property. Claire stood by the doorway, tears in her eyes. "You could have been hurt," she whispered. Keanu looked at her gently. "Your brother risked his life to tell the truth. The least I can do is not hide from it." The lead officer approached. "Mr. Reeves, we'll need that evidence." "We can reopen the case now." Keanu handed him the torn fabric. "It's all yours. Just make sure Daniel's name is cleared." After the police left, the house felt quiet again. Claire turned to him, her eyes full of emotion. "You've done more for my brother than anyone ever could." Keanu shook his head. "No, I just kept my word." As dawn approached, the rain stopped. The light through the window fell gently across his face, and for the first time in years, Keanu Reeves felt something he hadn't known since Daniel's death, peace mixed with purpose. But neither of them knew that one more secret was still waiting, one that would turn everything they believed upside down again. The truth that set him free the morning after the confrontation. The sky over Los Angeles was calm and pale. The storm had passed, but its memory still lingered in the quiet streets. Keanu stood by the window, sipping his tea, his eyes distant. He hadn't slept, but he didn't look tired. For the first time, his heart felt lighter, not because the danger was over, but because the truth had finally started to rise. The police had taken the evidence, and by dawn, they had already linked the fabric to a car registered to one of the investors Daniel worked with. Within hours, the news broke. New investigation opens in Daniel Cole case. Possible foul play. The story spread like fire. Claire watched the headlines from the couch, tears falling quietly down her cheeks. "It's finally happening," she whispered. Keanu nodded. "Your brother's name will be cleared." But there was still one thing left. One truth that even the court hadn't heard. He walked to the small wooden chest in his study and pulled out a folder. Old, worn, and sealed. "Daniel left this with me," he said softly. "I never opened it because I thought it was meant for the police. But now, I think it's time." Together they sat down and opened the folder. Inside was a single page, Daniel's handwriting again, trembling but full of love. "If you're reading this, it means the truth has found its way home. I was never afraid to die, but I was afraid to leave without saying this. Keanu, you were the best friend I ever had. You taught me what loyalty really means. And Claire, if you ever see this, know that I loved you more than my own life. I made mistakes, but you were never one of them. I wanted to protect you both, even from myself." The letter ended with one final line. "Don't let grief turn into guilt. Let love be what remains." Claire covered her face, sobbing softly. Keanu reached over, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He wasn't just saying goodbye," he said quietly. "He was freeing us, Later that week, the court officially closed the case. Daniel's death ruled no longer an accident, but a setup. Arrests were made. The truth had won, finally. As the reporters crowded around the courthouse again, Keanu didn't speak. He simply smiled politely and walked away. Fame, noise, and recognition had never mattered to him. What mattered was that he had kept his promise. That evening, he and Claire stood by the ocean where Daniel's ashes had been scattered years ago. The wind was gentle, and the waves whispered softly against the shore. He would have wanted this, Claire said. Peace, no more secrets, Keanu nodded. He has it now. And maybe, so do we. She looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. You could have walked away, Keanu. No one would have blamed you. He smiled faintly. When someone you love leaves a piece of their soul with you, you don't walk away. You carry it until it finds home. They stood there in silence, watching the sunset turn the water gold. And for a brief, perfect moment, it felt as though Daniel was there, not as a ghost, but as peace itself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Keanu took a deep breath, his voice low and steady. Some secrets don't destroy lives, he said. They save them, when told at the right time. The waves washed over the shore, carrying the last traces of the past away. And in their place, there was only stillness, honesty, and the quiet strength of two people who had finally learned what love and loyalty truly meant. Keanu Reeves walked away from that day not as an actor or a headline, but as a man who had fulfilled his promise and found peace in the truth.